The sky above Denver turned dark on a sunny summer afternoon. Giant black ships, smooth as polished stone, pushed through the clouds. Their shadows fell over the city like a cold blanket. Major Frank Wells sat in a small diner with his wife Lisa. His coffee was still hot when every phone in the place started to make loud alarm sounds at the same time. "This is not a drill," said the message on his screen. "All military personnel report to nearest base immediately." Frank looked at Lisa. Her face had gone pale. "Go," she said. "Call me when you can." He kissed her goodbye, not knowing it might be their last. On the street, people pointed up at the sky and took videos with their phones. Some ran. Others just stood and watched, their mouths open. The ship was huge, at least a mile wide. It made no sound as it hung in the air. Frank's car radio told him the story was the same in other places: New York, London, Beijing, Tokyo, Moscow. 28 cities in total had ships above them, all exactly the same. At the base, General Ryan paced in front of a room full of officers. "They're not answering any of our messages," he said. "All languages, all frequencies, nothing." "What do they want?" asked Frank. "If they wanted to destroy us right away, they could have," said the general. "They have technology that makes ours look like toys." For 3 days, the ships just hung there. They did nothing. The world waited. Some people said they came in peace. Others said it was the end of the world. Churches filled up, so did bars. The stock market crashed. The internet was filled with theories and fake news. Frank worked long hours at the base, helping to set up defenses that everyone knew would probably be useless. At night, he called Lisa. "I love you," he told her each time. "Stay safe." On the morning of the 4th day, Frank woke up at his desk to the sound of alarms. On the screens around him, he saw it happening. The bottoms of the ships had opened. They came down like rain, thousands of smaller craft. They were about the size of cars but shaped like teardrops. They moved too fast for human weapons to track. The first targets were military bases, including Frank's. He barely made it to the shelter before the explosion started. When he came out 6 hours later, half the base was gone. The communication center was destroyed. The air was filled with smoke and strange smells, and there were bodies on the ground that weren't human. Frank's team found one that was mostly intact. It had gray skin, 4 arms and eyes like those of an insect, made up of many smaller parts. It wore some kind of armor that felt alive when touched. Its weapons were built into its arms. "Bag it and tag it," said Frank. "The scientists will want to see this." Professor Diane Carter was one of those scientists. She was eating breakfast in her small apartment near MIT when the attack started. Her phone rang. "Professor Carter, this is Colonel Wilson. We need you at the secure facility in Waltham. Now." A helicopter picked her up from the roof of her building. Below, she could see people running in the streets. Some of the buildings were on fire. The alien ships moved through the air like fish in water. At the facility, they showed her the alien body. "We're calling them the Vex," said Colonel Wilson. "That's what the captured radio signals sound like. A sort of buzzing Vex, Vex, Vex sound." Diane put on gloves and started her work. She had studied animal and plant life all her career. Now, she was the first person to examine life from another world. "The inside is as strange as the outside," she said after her first cut. "They have 3 organs that look like hearts. The blood is thick and dark blue." While she worked, reports came in from around the world. The Vex had landed troops in every major city. They moved too fast for normal guns to hit them. Their weapons cut through walls like they were paper. The first week was the worst. Millions died. World leaders went into hiding. The internet stopped working in most places. TV and radio stations went off the air. Frank's unit joined with other survivors from the base. They became a resistance cell, moving through Denver at night, watching the Vex, trying to find ways to fight back. Lisa was still alive. She had made it to a farm outside the city with some neighbors. They talked when they could on a ham radio that Frank had found. "I miss you," she said. "I'll come for you," he promised. "When I can." Diane worked day and night studying the Vex. She found something odd. Their brains are small, she told Colonel Wilson. Too small for a species that can travel between stars. What does that mean, he asked. I think they might be soldiers, she said, but not the ones in charge. By the end of the first week, something strange happened. The Vex advance started to slow down. They had taken most major cities, but they stopped pushing into the countryside. They're setting up bases, said General Ryan during a radio call with resistance leaders. Digging in. Why? Asked Frank. Why not finish us off? I don't know, said the general. But it gives us time. Time to figure them out. Time to find a way to fight back. Frank looked up at the night sky. Somewhere up there beyond the black ships were the stars. The place where the Vex had come from. They hit Earth first, he said quietly. But from the way they're acting, I'm starting to wonder if even they know what comes next. Navy Lieutenant Greg Foster stood on the roof of a half-destroyed hospital in San Diego. Through his binoculars, he watched the Vex patrol the streets below. They moved in groups of 5, with their strange four-armed bodies gliding more than walking. There, he said to the young sailor next to him. Watch the one in front. As if on cue, all 5 Vex stopped at the same moment. They stood perfectly still for about 10 seconds, then resumed their patrol. They do that every 6 hours on the dot, said Greg. I've been watching for days. Greg had been separated from his unit during the first attack. He had found other survivors and set up a small watching post on the hospital roof. For 2 weeks he had been tracking Vex movements and taking notes. It's like they reset, he said. Or maybe they get new orders. He wrote down his findings in a small notebook. The sailor looked doubtful. Even if you're right, what good does it do us? We can't get close to them without getting killed. Greg finished writing. Knowledge is power. We need to get this information to someone who can use it. That someone was Nancy Webb. Before the attack, she had been a high-ranking official in Homeland Security. Now she led the Alien Defense Initiative, or ADI, a mix of military, scientists, and civilians working together to find ways to fight back. The ADI had set up a hidden base in the mountains of Colorado. They had managed to keep some communication, networks working using old radio equipment and repaired cell towers. When Greg's message reached her, Nancy called a meeting. This could be important, she told her team. If the Vex pause at regular times, we might be able to use that. On the other side of the country, in Chicago, Dr. Alan Murphy was making his own discovery. Before the attack, he had been a physics professor. Now he worked in a basement lab with equipment he had saved from his university. Alan had been studying a piece of Vex armor. It was light but incredibly strong. Normal bullets couldn't break it. It's not the material, he muttered to himself, as he ran tests. It's something else. He dropped a metal ball onto the armor. Instead of bouncing, the ball seemed to float for a moment before falling off. Alan's eyes went wide. They're controlling gravity. He ran more tests. The armor wasn't made of some super-strong alien metal. Instead, it created a small gravity field that pushed away anything that tried to hit it. But there was something else. The field wasn't constant, it got stronger and weaker in a pattern. Alan checked the Earth's natural magnetic readings for the same time period. They matched. The field changes with the Earth's magnetic pulses, he said. Sometimes it's almost not there at all. He grabbed his radio and coded a message for the ADI. At the same time, Susan Mitchell was making progress of her own. Before the attack, she had been a professor of linguistics at Harvard. Her husband died when the Vex took Boston. Now she worked in a small room full of radio equipment. For weeks she had been listening to Vex communications. The strange buzzing, sounds they made. This isn't right, she said to herself. She had expected the Vex to talk to each other a lot, especially during battles, but they hardly communicated at all. It's like they're following a script, she told Nancy during their weekly call. They don't discuss plans or change their minds. They just follow orders. Nancy added this to her growing file of Vex behaviors. So they might not be able to adapt quickly to new situations? Exactly, said Susan. They're more like robots than thinking beings. This matched what Diane Carter had found when studying Vex bodies. Their brains were too small for complex thinking, but the most surprising discovery came from a teenager. named Richard Peters. Before the attack, Richard had been a normal high school student in Seattle. Now he was hiding with his family and neighbors in the ruins of the city. One rainy day, Richard saw a Vex patrol coming close to their hiding place. In panic, he grabbed the only thing near him, a water balloon left from his little sister's birthday party. He threw it at the closest Vex. The balloon hit the alien's weapon arm and burst. To Richard's surprise, the weapon sparked and smoked. The Vex made a high-pitched sound and backed away. "Water," Richard told the others later. "Their weapons don't like water." Word of this discovery spread through the survivor network. Nancy received 3 different reports about it in one day. "We need to test this," she said. The ADI set up a trap. They put a water tank above a door and waited for a Vex patrol to pass below. When the water fell on them, 2 of the 5 Vex lost the use of their weapons. The human fighters still lost the battle. The other 3 Vex were enough to drive them back, but it was the first time they had disabled any Vex weapon. Frank Wells received the news about water at his camp outside Denver. He had moved his team there after finding Lisa at the farm. Now they were gathering more survivors and planning how to fight back. "Water," he said, looking at the report. "It makes sense. They landed in 28 cities, but all in dry areas. None near the oceans." Lisa looked thoughtful. "Maybe that's why they stopped advancing. They're afraid of our oceans." Frank shared this idea with Nancy. She passed it to other ADI groups. Slowly, the pieces were coming together. The Vex had weaknesses. They paused every 6 hours. Their gravity armor got weaker with Earth's magnetic pulses. Their weapons failed when wet. They couldn't think quickly or change plans. They were strong, but not unbeatable. At the end of the 2nd month, Nancy called a secure meeting with all ADI leaders. "It's time," she said. "We know enough now. It's time to fight back." 6 months after the Vex first appeared in Earth's skies, the world was a different place. Cities lay partly in ruins. Millions were dead. But humans had not given up. General Heather Rodriguez stood before a map of North America in the ADI Underground Command Center. Red marks showed where the Vex controlled territory. Green marks showed human strongholds. "It's time," she said to the room full of military leaders and scientists. "We've spent months learning about them. Now we hit back." The plan was called Operation Raindrop. It would be the first large-scale attack against the Vex since the early days of the war. "Lieutenant Foster's discovery about their reset periods is key," said Heather. "We attack exactly when they pause. Dr. Murphy's research on their gravity fields gives us the best times to strike, when Earth's magnetic pulse is strongest." Nancy Webb nodded. "And we use water-based weapons whenever possible." The meeting broke up with each person knowing their job. Messages went out to resistance groups around the world. The counterattack would happen in 1 week. In what was left of Detroit, Kevin Garcia worked day and night on his invention. Before the invasion, he had been an engineering student. Now he was building something that might help turn the tide. "It's an EMP generator," he explained to the fighters gathered around him, "but small enough to carry." He held up a device about the size of a football. "When you turn it on, it makes an electromagnetic pulse. It won't hurt humans, but it should disable Vex tech for about 2 minutes. One of the fighters looked doubtful. "Only 2 minutes?" Kevin nodded. "But that might be enough time to get close and use water weapons." All around the world, humans prepared. They made special guns that shot water instead of bullets. They found the best hiding spots near Vex patrols. They watched and waited for the signal. Up in space, another battle was brewing. When the Vex arrived, they had destroyed many satellites. But not all the space stations had been hit. The International Space Station had been moved to a new orbit to hide it. Commander Paul Lewis led the small group of astronauts and space agency workers who had been in space when the attack began. They had watched the invasion from above, helpless, but not anymore. Using small shuttlecraft, they had been watching the Vex ships that brought supplies from the larger ships to the ground. "Their supply chain is their weak point," Paul told his team. "They bring down food, weapons, and parts on a regular schedule. If we can disrupt that, the ground forces will be weaker." It was a dangerous plan. The human shuttles were small and had no weapons, but they had surprise on their side. The day of the attack came. General Rodriguez gave the order, and all around the world humans moved against the Vex at the same moment. In Detroit, Kevin and his team activated their EMP devices just as a Vex patrol entered their trap zone. The aliens froze as their technology failed. The humans rushed in with water sprayers. For the first time, they won a direct fight without losing a single person. In the ruins of London, fighters used the city's old water pipes to create traps. When the Vex walked into a street, they turned on the pressure. Water shot up from under the ground, disabling the aliens' weapons. In Tokyo, they used the time when the Vex paused to move in close. They had found that without their gravity armor working at full strength, the aliens could be hurt by normal bullets. In space, Commander Lewis and his team attached themselves to a Vex supply ship as it moved toward Earth. Using tools meant for space station repairs, they cut into the ship's hull. Inside, they found crates of weapons and strange food. They planted small bombs and left. The supply ship exploded just as it entered Earth's atmosphere. All over the world, humans were fighting back. And for the first time, they were winning more battles than they lost. But the true turning point came in Cairo, Egypt. There, Dr. Murphy had traveled personally to test his new invention, the gravity anchor. It creates a field that disrupts their gravity manipulation, he explained to the local resistance leader. If it works, their armor won't protect them anymore. They set up the device in a square where Vex patrols often passed. When the aliens entered the area, Dr. Murphy turned on the gravity anchor. The effect was immediate. The Vex stumbled, suddenly heavy in Earth's normal gravity. Their armor, which had been nearly invincible, now cracked under bullets and blades. The Cairo resistance took out an entire Vex unit without a single human casualty. News of the victory spread through the human networks. Dr. Murphy sent the plans for the gravity anchor to every resistance cell with the materials to build one. For the first time since the invasion, the red marks on General Rodriguez's map started to shrink. Humans were taking back territory. Frank Wells led a team that cleared the Vex from the outskirts of Denver. After each battle, they collected Vex weapons and technology. "We're learning how to use their own tools against them," he told Lisa one night at their camp. "Some of their tech works for humans, too." Lisa had been helping Diane Carter study the Vex biology. "There's something strange about them," she said. "Diane thinks they might not even be a natural species. They might have been created by someone else." Frank looked up at the night sky, where the large Vex ship still hung in orbit. "So who sent them? And why haven't they sent more?" In the ADI command center, Nancy and Heather were asking the same questions. The counterattack was going well, better than they had hoped. But they knew the war was far from over. "We need to know more about what's happening in space," said Nancy. "If we can cut off their connection to their homeworld, we might be able to win this thing." Heather nodded and picked up a radio. "Get me Commander Lewis," she said. "I have a new mission for him." 1 year after the invasion began, the tide of war had changed. Humans were winning battles all over the world. They had taken back many cities and towns. They had learned to use the Vex's weaknesses against them. But the biggest questions remained unanswered. Who were the Vex? Where did they come from? Why had they attacked Earth? In her lab at the ADI headquarters, Dr. Diane Carter worked day and night to find answers. Her team had captured several live Vex during recent battles. Unlike the dead ones they had studied before, these were intact and healthy. "Look at this," Diane said to Nancy Webb, pointing at a screen showing the inside of a Vex's body. "See these parts here? They're not natural." Nancy looked closely. "What do you mean?" "They're machines," said Diane. "Tiny machines inside their bodies. And these marks here?" She pointed to lines on the Vex's skin. "They're like barcodes. I think the Vex were made, not born." "Made? You mean they're robots?" Diane shook her head. "Not robots. Bioengineered. Someone took living creatures and changed them, added technology to their bodies. They're servants, not the masters." This news changed everything. If the Vex were servants, who were they serving? And where were the real masters? While Diane studied the Vex biology, Others were making discoveries of their own. Maria Daniels had been an astronomer before the invasion. Now she worked with Commander Lewis's space team. They had captured a small Vex command ship during a raid and brought it to a hidden base in the mountains. Maria had been trying to access the ship's computers for weeks. Finally, she found a way in. "It's amazing," she told Commander Lewis, her eyes bright with excitement. "I can see their star maps. I can see where they came from." The maps showed star systems that human astronomers had never seen before. According to the ship's navigation data, the Vex had traveled from a star over 400 light-years away. "That's impossible," said Lewis. "Even at light speed, that would take 400 years. "They have faster-than-light travel," said Maria. "But that's not the most interesting part." She pointed to a section of data showing communication attempts. The Vex had been trying to send messages back to their homeworld, but all the messages showed as failed. "They can't talk to home," said Maria. "Something is blocking them." Laura Nelson worked in a different part of the same base. She was a quantum physicist who specialized in understanding how things worked at the smallest level. She had been studying the Vex's faster-than-light drive system. "It's brilliant but flawed," she explained to General Rodriguez during a briefing. "They use quantum entanglement to move faster than light. Basically, they connect 2 points in space and step through." "So why can't they call for help?" asked the general. Laura smiled. "That's the interesting part. Earth has unique properties they didn't expect. Our magnetic field and the specific mix of elements in our planet create quantum interference. When they try to send signals home, the i.e. quantum connection breaks down." "Are you saying they're stuck here?" asked Nancy. "Cut off from their homeworld?" Laura nodded. "Exactly. They can't call for help. They can't get new orders. They're stranded." This explained why no new Vex ships had arrived even after humans started winning. It explained why the Vex seemed to be following old plans instead of adapting to new situations. Frank Wells was part of the team that explored a captured Vex base near what used to be Kansas City. They found strange machines and devices they had never seen before. "I think this is some kind of cloning facility," he told his team as they walked through a large room filled with pods. They were making more of themselves. Lisa pointed to the pods, which were empty and dry. "It looks like they ran out of whatever they needed to make it work," Frank nodded. "They probably didn't bring enough supplies for a long stay. They didn't plan to be cut off." Back at ADI headquarters, all these discoveries were coming together into a clear picture. General Rodriguez called a meeting of all department heads. "Here's what we know," she said, standing in front of a large screen. "The Vex are bioengineered servants, not the real enemy. They came from a star system 400 light-years away. They used faster-than-light travel to get here, but something about Earth is blocking their ability to communicate with home. They're stranded," said Nancy, "and they're running out of supplies." Diane Carter nodded. "We've noticed they're getting weaker. Their biology is breaking down without regular maintenance, I guess you could call it." "So who sent them?" asked one of the military officers. "And why attack Earth?" "The data from their ship suggests they're scouts," said Maria. "They were sent to conquer Earth and prepare it for their masters to arrive later." "But the masters don't know the scouts are stuck," said Laura. "They can't get any signals. For all they know, Earth destroyed the Vex completely." The room was quiet as everyone thought about what this meant. "So we have an enemy out there who sent the Vex," said General Rodriguez finally. "An enemy who might send more forces someday." "But we have time," said Nancy. "Time to prepare, and we have Vex technology to study and use." Frank, who had joined the meeting by video, spoke up. "We should be building our own ships, learning how their faster-than-light drive works, getting ready to defend ourselves in space." General Rodriguez nodded. "Agreed. From now on, that's our top priority. We continue fighting the Vex on the ground, but we start looking to the stars." As the meeting ended, Laura had one more thing to add. "There's something else in the Vex communication data," she said. "Something they were trying to tell their masters before they got cut off. They were afraid." "Afraid of what?" asked Nancy. "Of us," said Laura. "They didn't expect humans to fight back so effectively. They didn't expect us to learn and adapt so quickly. Their last message attempts all contain warnings about humans being more dangerous than expected. For the first time in months, General Rodriguez smiled. Good. Let's prove them right. 3 years after the Vex first appeared in Earth's skies, the last battle was fought in the ruins of Sydney, Australia. Colonel John Bennett led the final assault on the last Vex command ship that had landed on Earth. They're weak now, he told his troops before the attack. Their supplies are gone, their weapons are failing. Today we take back our planet completely. The battle lasted only 6 hours. The Vex fought to the end, but they were shadows of what they had been. Without contact with their home world, without new supplies, they had slowly broken down. When the last Vex soldier fell, a cheer went up from human fighters around the world. The war on the ground was over, but the work in space was just beginning. Edward Martin led the team that studied the Vex ships. Before the invasion, he had worked for a space agency. Now he was in charge of the most important project in human history. We figured out how their engines work, he told the newly formed World Council. We can build our own ships now, ships that can travel between stars. The council had been formed after the war, bringing together leaders from all nations. President William Clark, who had been a diplomat before the invasion, led the council. How soon can we have our first ship ready? He asked. 1 year, said Edward. Maybe less. We're using parts from the Vex ships we captured, and we've learned how to make more. Captain Sharon Taylor was chosen to lead the first human mission to another star. She had fought in the war and later worked with Commander Lewis in space. This won't be just an exploration mission, she told her crew during training. We need to set up early warning systems. If the masters who sent the Vex decide to come looking for them, we need to know before they arrive. The ship was built in orbit around Earth. It was named Hope, and it looked like nothing humans had built before. Parts of it were clearly based on Vex technology, with the same smooth black surfaces, but other parts were purely human, with the flags of Earth's nations painted on the hull. On the day of launch, people all around the world watched on screens and listened on radios. President Clark gave a speech that was broadcast everywhere. 3 years ago, aliens came to conquer us. They failed. They hit Earth first, but they never returned home. Instead, they gave us the stars. Hope's engines powered up, glowing with strange blue light. Then in a flash that lit up the night sky, it was gone, traveling faster than light to a nearby star system. Back on Earth, the rebuilding continued. Cities rose from ruins. Farms grew food again. Children played in parks, where once battles had been fought. Frank and Lisa Wells lived in a small house outside the New Denver. Frank worked with the space program, helping to build more ships. Lisa had become a teacher, telling children about the war and what humans had learned from it. They often sat on their porch at night, looking up at the stars. Do you think they'll come? Lisa asked one night. The ones who made the Vex? Frank took her hand. Maybe, but we'll be ready if they do. In her lab, Susan Mitchell finally finished translating the last Vex message, the one they had tried to send home before their communications failed completely. She read it with wide eyes, then called Nancy Webb immediately. You need to see this, she said. I know what the Vex were trying to tell their masters. Nancy read the translation. It was short but powerful. Do not follow. They are not what we thought. Humans adapt, humans learn, humans fight together. We cannot win. Earth belongs to them. Nancy smiled as she put down the paper. The Vex had come to Earth thinking it would be an easy victory. Instead, they had found that humans, when pushed to the edge, were the most dangerous species they had ever met. Somewhere out there, 400 light years away, the masters who had sent the Vex waited for news that would never come. And if they ever decided to find out what had happened, they would find a humanity ready to defend not just Earth, but the stars themselves.